Hello, everyone. As we approach the end of yet another Olympic Games, I'm inspired to delve into the fascinating history of the ancient Olympics. From their inception around 2,800 years ago, a lot has changed, but it's incredible to see how this event has evolved and remained significant over the centuries. So, let's dive into what the ancient Olympics were all about, how they were held, what sports were included, who could compete, what the winners received, and how the Olympics came to exist in their modern form that we know today. The ancient Olympics were fundamentally a religious festival held in honor of Zeus, the king of the gods. According to tradition, they began in 776 BC in the 8th century BC and were held every 4 years in the sanctuary city of Olympia. Olympia housed several temples dedicated to gods and heroes, including the Grand Temple of Zeus, which housed the famous statue of Zeus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This statue, about 12 meters tall, depicted Zeus seated on a throne, holding a scepter in his left hand and a statue of Nike, the personification of victory, in his right hand. The olive wreath on Zeus's head symbolized triumph and victory, and it was a similar wreath that was awarded to victorious athletes in the Olympic Games. The Games were more than just athletic competitions. They were a celebration of religion and culture that united Greeks from various city-states, often rivals, in a spirit of peace and friendly competition. During the Games, a sacred truce, known as the Ekakeria, was declared, allowing safe passage for athletes, spectators, and artists to Olympia. It's worth noting that the ancient Olympics were not limited to athletic competitions. The Games were part of a grand religious ceremony that included dances, prayers, feasts, and numerous animal sacrifices performed at the altar of Zeus. Pausanias, a Greek author from the 2nd century AD, describes the altar of Zeus as an impressive structure divided into 2 levels. The first, a common stone construction where animals were sacrificed, and the second, made of the ashes of the animal bones mixed with other substances to form a mortar. This material accumulated on the altar, so that the more sacrifices performed, the higher the altar grew. In Pausanias' time, the altar had already accumulated nearly 5 meters in height. In addition to the Temple of Zeus, there were temples and altars for other gods and heroes, such as Hera, Zeus's wife, and Heracles, Hercules in Latin, Zeus's son. During the Olympics, sacrifices were made at these altars. There were also other structures, such as the stadium and the hippodrome, leading us to the next part of this video. The Olympic Games themselves, the athletic competitions held during this grand festival for Zeus. The Olympic festivals also included music, poetry, and drama contests, reflecting the importance of culture and the arts in Greek society. Thus, the Olympics were a total celebration of human excellence, not just in sport but also in art and spirituality. The ancient Olympic Games were closely intertwined with religious practices. Athletic competitions were a form of worship of Zeus. Athletes dedicated their victories to the god, made vows and sacrifices, and were crowned with olive wreaths, symbolizing the victory of Zeus Olympian. The ancient Olympics were not the only religious athletic festival in ancient Greece, but they were the most prestigious. Athletes came from all over Greece to compete in the ancient Olympics, representing cities such as Athens, Sparta, and Crete. Ancient Greece was politically fragmented, with each city having its own leaders and interests. Therefore, during the Olympic Games, a truce was declared to allow athletes and pilgrims to travel freely to Olympia. This Olympic truce symbolized the unity among Greeks, allowing rivals such as Athenians and Spartans to participate together in the worship of Zeus. Olympia was not a city in the modern sense but a sacred site without residential structures. Athletes and pilgrims camped around the sanctuary. Ancient texts, like those by Epictetus, a famous Stoic philosopher, describe the harsh conditions of these camps with insects, heat, and commotion. However, These hardships were seen as an opportunity to practice stoic virtues, such as resilience. Before the competitions, athletes would present themselves before the statue of Zeus Horkios, Zeus of oaths, making a sacred pact not to violate the rules of the competitions. Otherwise, they would be cursed by the god and penalized, often having to pay to erect a statue in the Zeus complex. Pausanias mentions seeing at least 18 statues of this kind. Athletes also underwent rigorous physical and spiritual training before the games. They trained for 10 months in their hometowns and then spent a month in Olympia under the supervision of Olympic judges known as Hellenodikai. This final preparation included not only physical training but also religious rituals and sacrifices to the gods. Olympia was not a city in the modern sense but a sacred site without residential structures. Athletes and pilgrims camped around the sanctuary. Ancient texts, like those by Epictetus, a famous Stoic philosopher, describe the harsh conditions of these camps with insects, heat, and commotion. However, these hardships were seen as an opportunity to practice Stoic virtues, such as resilience. Before the competitions, athletes would present themselves before the statue of Zeus Horkios, Zeus of oaths, making a sacred pact not to violate the rules of the competitions. Otherwise, they would be cursed by the god and penalized, often having to pay to erect a statue in the Zeus complex. Pausanias mentions seeing at least 18 statues of this kind. Athletes also underwent rigorous physical and spiritual training before the games. They trained for 10 months in their hometowns and then spent a month in Olympia under the supervision of Olympic judges known as Hellenodikai. This final preparation included not only physical training but also religious rituals and sacrifices to the gods. The main event of the ancient Olympics was the foot race in the stadium, which was about 190 meters long, similar to today's 200-meter sprint. Other events included longer races, races with armor, equestrian events, wrestling, similar to modern Greco-Roman wrestling, boxing, pankration, a form of mixed martial arts, javelin throw, discus throw, long jump, and the pentathlon, which combined several of these events. Only free Greek men could compete in the ancient Olympics. Women, foreigners, and slaves were excluded. In many events, athletes competed nude, reflecting the Greek reverence for the human body and physical exercise. The Olympic program evolved over the centuries, with new events being added. For example, initially, the only competition was the stadium race. Over time, events like the pentathlon, which included running, long jump, discus throw, javelin throw, and wrestling, and equestrian events were introduced. The equestrian events, held in the hippodrome, were grand spectacles attracting large crowds. Women were not allowed to compete or watch the competitions. However, in some events, the winner was not the athlete but the owner of the horses or chariots used in the competition, allowing aristocratic women to win indirectly by hiring athletes to compete on their behalf. Women had their own athletic festival in honor of Hera, called the Huriae, where young girls competed in foot races. These games were held in Olympia but in a separate area from the main Olympic Games. There is also the story of the Spartan princess Cynisca, who entered her horses in the chariot race and became the first woman to win an Olympic event, although she herself did not physically participate in the race. Winners of the ancient Olympics received only an olive wreath. There were no monetary prizes. However, some city-states offered rewards or political advantages to encourage their athletes, as victory brought prestige to the entire city. This served as a form of diplomatic demonstration of power, similar to the current competition between nations for Olympic medals. Besides olive wreaths, winners often received statues of themselves erected in Olympia and additional rewards in their home cities. They were celebrated as heroes, with benefits such as free meals for life, honored seats in theaters, and tax exemptions. The ancient Olympics began to decline during the Roman conquest of Greece, starting in the 2nd century BC. Although they continued to be held until the 4th century AD, the event became corrupt, with reports of Roman emperors being declared champions even without competing. The definitive end of the ancient Olympics came during the reign of Emperor Theodosius I, who declared Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire and banned all pagan rituals in AD 393. The Temple of Zeus in Olympia was destroyed, possibly by fire, marking the end of the ancient Olympics. Subsequent barbarian invasions and earthquakes completed the destruction of the Olympia sanctuary. Over time, the exact location of Olympia was forgotten until it was rediscovered and excavated by archaeologists in the 19th century. It wasn't until the late 19th century that the Olympics were revived, now in the form of the modern Olympics. The first modern games were held in 1896 in Athens, thanks to the efforts of figures like Greek magnate Evangelos Zappos and French Baron Pierre de Coubertin. The modern Olympics incorporated contemporary values and became an international event, with nations competing in various sports. The revival of the modern Olympics was driven by the desire to promote peace and international understanding through sport. Pierre de Coubertin believed that the Games could help unite nations and promote ideals of excellence, friendship, and respect. The first modern Olympics were a great success and marked the beginning of a movement that continues to grow today. Since then, the Olympic Games have been held every 4 years except during the 2 World Wars. Each edition of the Games brings new stories of courage, perseverance, and unity among peoples. I hope you found this journey through the history of the ancient Olympics interesting. For those who want to delve deeper into the topic, I'll leave some references in the video description. Share your thoughts below about what you found intriguing, what you'd like to see in future videos, and if there's any specific aspect of the ancient Olympics you'd like me to explore further. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.